It was the kind of news that shook Thornton Township and Dalton to the Tiffany Henyard's tenure as a leader of Dalton and Thornton Township was as divisive as it was controversial, and it culminated in her recent arrest. A dramatic downfall that left the communities she led grappling with the fallout of her administration. Henyard leadership was defined by a series of financial scandals, clashes with critics, and accusations of mismanagement as her administration progressed. Reports of questionable spending began to surface, raising red flags about how public funds were being handled. These issues eventually evolved into a full-blown investigation that uncovered patterns of misconduct, including allegations of public funds being used for personal expenses, and attempts to obstruct inquiries into her financial practices. One of the most glaring incidents that raised suspicions involved a $43,000 shopping spree on Amazon that was charged to municipal accounts. This incident sparked widespread outrage from residents and watchdog organizations alike, who viewed it as an egregious misuse of taxpayer dollars. The community expressed their outrage not just at the amount spent, but at the apparent disregard for basic fiscal responsibility and transparency. In another widely criticized move, Henyard spearheaded a $2 million project to build a skating rink in the township. This project became a focal point for accusations of reckless spending and fiscal irresponsibility. Many residents questioned the necessity of such an expensive project, particularly when other pressing community needs appeared to be neglected. The rink was widely seen as a vanity project, especially since it was operational primarily during Henyard's personal events, fueling accusations that it was a taxpayer-funded endeavor to promote her own image rather than a genuine attempt to improve the community. Critics of Henyard's administration also accuse her of mismanaging township finances and failing to ensure basic accountability in local governance. Over time, these concerns escalated, creating an atmosphere of distrust and dissatisfaction among the residents. The situation eventually became untenable, prompting federal authorities to step in and investigate her financial dealings. The investigation uncovered a pattern of behavior that suggested Henyard had used public funds for personal expenses, an issue that compounded the growing list of accusations against her. Despite the mounting evidence, Henyard maintained an air of defiance throughout the investigation. She insisted that she was the victim of politically motivated attacks and doubled down on her leadership style. In fact, she went so far as to announce her intention to seek re-election in 2025, claiming that the controversies surrounding her were part of a larger conspiracy to undermine her efforts. Her bold claims, however, were unable to overshadow the growing body of evidence against her as the investigation progressed and more information came to light. Henyard's downfall became inevitable. Her arrest marked the culmination of a series of financial scandals, political missteps, and confrontations with critics that had plagued her administration from the outside. Said the communities of Dalton and Thornton Township were left to grapple with the implications of her leadership, and residents were divided over how to interpret her fall from grace. Some saw her arrest as a long overdue moment of accountability, believing that it was a necessary step toward addressing years of perceived mismanagement. For these residents, the investigation and subsequent legal battles symbolized an effort to bring transparency and honesty back to local government. Others, however, remained in disbelief, still holding out hope for her innocence and refusing to accept the possibility that their once promising leader could be guilty of such serious misconduct. Throughout her time in office, Henyard's leadership style was often as controversial as her policies. Her approach sparked frequent clashes with the Dalton Village Board of Trustees and other local officials. These tensions were a constant source of drama and contributed to an atmosphere of dysfunction in the township. Henyard's leadership style was marked by a sense of defiance and a refusal to back down from her positions even in the face of growing opposition. This created an environment in which cooperation and compromise were often difficult to achieve, further exacerbating the challenges facing the community. Despite these challenges, Henyard remained a polarizing figure in Dalton and Thornton Township. Her supporters argued that she was a bold and innovative leader who was willing to take risk in order to improve the community. They pointed to projects like the $2 million skating rink as evidence of her commitment to creating opportunities for local residents. These supporters saw the criticism of her administration as politically motivated and believed that Henyard was being unfairly targeted by her opponents. On the other hand, her detractors argued that her leadership was defined by fiscal irresponsibility, lack of accountability, and a tendency to prioritize personal ambitions over the needs of the community. They criticize her for using public funds to fund projects that seem more focused on her personal image than on addressing the real needs of the township. The $43,000 shopping spree on Amazon along with the controversial skating ring project, were seen as clear examples of how Henyard had abused her position for personal gain. Henyard leadership was also marked by a number of failed initiatives and promises that never came to fruition. While she had promised to improve local infrastructure, enhance public services, and create new economic opportunities, many of these initiatives were either delayed or abandoned altogether. The lack of follow-through on these promises further eroded trust in her leadership and added to the perception that her administration was marked by incompetence and mismanagement. The investigation into Henyard's financial dealings only deepened the sense of betrayal felt by many residents. The federal probe uncovered evidence that public funds had been misused, including allegations that Henyard had used township money to pay for personal expenses. These revelations raised serious questions about the integrity of her leadership and the level of oversight that had been applied to her administration's finances. It also revealed a pattern of behavior in which Henyard had allegedly attempted to obstruct inquiries into her financial practices, further damaging her credibility and reputation. As Henyard faces serious legal battles in the coming months, the impact of her leadership on Dalton and Thornton Township will continue to be felt. The scandal surrounding her administration has left a deep divide in the community, with residents now forced to confront the reality of her mismanagement and the implications of her actions. While some may view her arrest as a necessary step toward accountability, others will continue to question whether the true extent of her wrongdoing has been fully revealed. In the wake of Henyard's arrest, the communities of Dalton and Thornton Township are at a crossroads. The once promising leader who many had hoped would bring change and progress to the area has now become a symbol of political failure and scandal. As the legal proceedings unfold, the residents of these communities will have to decide how to move forward and whether they can rebuild the trust that was lost during Henyard's tumultuous time in office. Henyard from grace marks a dramatic shift for both Dalton and Thornton Township communities, now grappling with the consequences of her controversial leadership. The challenges facing these areas in the wake of her administration will not be easy to overcome, but it is clear that her downfall has forced many to confront the need for greater transparency, accountability, and responsible governance. The legacy of Tiffany Henyard, once seen as a promising and ambitious leader, will now be defined by the controversies and scandals that ultimately led to her arrest and the unraveling of her political career. Tiffany Henyard's tenure as mayor of Dalton and supervisor of Thornton Township was marked by escalating tensions, contentious leadership, and a growing number of scandals that eventually led to her dramatic arrest. Over time, Henyard alienated many of her once strong supporters, particularly members of the township's board of trustees, who grew increasingly frustrated with her leadership style, which they viewed as highly centralized and uncooperative. Henyard's refusal to engage in meaningful collaboration with trustees, her combative rhetoric, and allegations of retaliation against those who oppose her created a toxic environment that undermined the effectiveness of her administration. This divisiveness, coupled with financial mismanagement and allegations of corruption, ultimately led to her downfall and left the community in a state of uncertainty. Her administration was characterized by frequent clashes with Dalton Village Board of Trustees and residents alike. Meetings often spiraled into chaos, with trustees accusing Henyard of overreaching and attempting to consolidate power at the expense of transparency and collaboration. Henyard, for her part, retaliated with claims of sabotage, and these confrontations often became the focal point of heated sessions. In one particularly dramatic incident, Henyard stormed out of a board meeting after being heckled by both trustees and residents. As she walked out, she shouted, "You should all be ashamed of yourselves." This outburst painted a picture of a leader in constant conflict, not only with her critics but with the broader political establishment. That she had once been part of Henyard's combative tendencies extended beyond the council chambers, where tensions ran high. To her social media platforms, she became infamous for live stream grants in which she lashed out at her opponents' branding